And when students, in this topic, we are going to discuss a very important aspect of probity in governance, which is called as the challenges of corruption. So challenges of corruption it was a topic under the unit of probity in governance. We are going to see what does this word corruption means, how it is manifested in the society, what are the causes of corruption, then how to combat corruption, and what is the basis of this corrupt practices in the society. So corruption basically means abuse of power for personal gain. So first thing, you need to have power in your hand. A person who does not have power in his hand, how will he do corruption? You need to have power in your hand. Then dishonesty and unethical behavior helps you to abuse that power for personal gains. So what becomes the basis of corruption in society? Self-interest. Self-interest becomes the basis of corruption in society. If there is lack of self-interest and the officer is always paying attention to the public interest, you will see less and less corruption in the society. But the moment selfishness comes in, the corruption rate is going to increase. On the contrary, the opposite of corruption was probity. Corruption and probity. What were the necessary ingredients for probity? If we remember, it was accountability, it was transparency. Probity includes uprightness, characterfulness, integrity and honesty. But when you talk about corruption, this is exactly opposite to what probity was. Instead of transparency, you will have secrecy. Instead of honesty and integrity, you will have dishonesty. Instead of characterfulness and uprightness, you will have unethical behavior. So, the need of probity in governance is very important, and it can only happen when the challenges of corruption can be combated. So, we will also study how the challenges of corruption can be combated in the society. So as we know, self-interest or selfishness becomes the basis of society. Thomas Hobbes, in his theory of contractarianism, have said that man is brutish and selfish, and it is the nature of man to be brutish and selfish, and for that reason he can do anything. And he says that that is the root cause of corruption in society. So this issue of corruption is not new. This has been happening in the society, and it is from a long time, and it has been, a part of the literature. If you see Chanakya, he has taken up many initiatives to combat corruption in the society. Okay, so it is seen in the Western world, it is seen in the modern world. Everybody was concerned with the concept of probity in governance, how to stop people to abuse power for self-gain or for self-care. How to give them the dose of probity, the dose of uprightness and characterfulness, so that the dishonesty from them is removed. That can be done in two ways. One is internal, other is external. Internal is one person becomes ethical himself, he becomes uprightful, he becomes characterful. On the other hand, we have agencies which try to stop corruption in the society. How do they combat corruption? So we need both of these systems to combat corruption in the society. So self-interest or selfishness becomes the basis for abuse of power. You need to have power first. Once you have power, then you need dishonest behavior and unethical behavior to abuse that power for personal gains. So corruption can be manifested in many ways. A politician do corruption for personal and private gains, also for benefit of the political party. Several people do corruption for themselves, for more money or gaining a flat somewhere or for kickbacks. And on the other hand, they also try to help their relative with the abuse of power. If this thing, corruption, takes place and it becomes the ratio of corrupt practices becomes more than the probity of governance in the whole administration, what ends up happening? It affects the economic system of the country very badly. The administration, the economic system, the society itself degrades. The people who should be benefited out of the public policy or the schemes, they are not benefited. Instead, misappropriation has been done in order to benefit the officials and the politicians. Now, those are the issues of corruption in our society, where the public money, which if it is going for a specific purpose, those people who it should be or ought to be benefiting, it is not benefiting them, rather it is benefiting the government machinery in a very unethical way. So sometimes people say corruption is the grease of administration, that without corruption things does not move. So such kind of delay and rate tapeism in order to seek benefit through bribery or through anything else, that is the result of a corrupt mind, unethical mind, and a dishonest character. And that is the basis of corruption in the society. Self-interest, selfishness, always looking for self-gain. And in this situation, what ends up happening? The public interest takes a backseat. So if you have probity in governance, you will focus on public interest. If you have corruption in your mind, you will think about personal interest. Let's take an example. If there is a dam in making, the dam has to be made for the public interest, so that through this dam there will be micro irrigation, the crops will be more effective, the yield will be more, the agriculture will benefit, the lower strata of the society. In turn, it will boom the economy. But at the same time, if there are several people from the scientific community who are refusing to construct this dam because the land is not appropriate for dam and it may result in disaster, but still the signatory authority, still the people who have to take the decision, the officials and the politicians, go forward with this idea of a dam just because the construction company pays a heavy kickback to them, hefty money to them, so as they can get the bidding, they can get the contract for building this dam. And in this situation, what's happening? The politicians or the officers are not thinking about the public interest. The probity from administration is totally gone and it has been replaced by corruption, means personal gain. Just to get some amount of money, just to get some benefits from the construction company, they allow to make this dam even when it was advised to not do so by the scientists. This is one of the example, and we can see such example everywhere in society. It be bigger project or a smaller project, it be a bigger decision or a smaller decision. Whenever the official's mind is corrupted with self-interest, corruption will be the result of that decision. On the other hand, if you focus on public interest, there will be probity in governance. Both the person sitting on the post and the instrument through which he is working, the policies, the act, the legislations, both of them needs to be pure. Both of them needs to have accountability, integrity and honesty. Okay. So this is what in a layman's language, in a simple language, corruption is. It is the abuse of power for personal gains. The basis of self-interest, the basis of corruption is self-interest or selfishness. On the opposite, probity, the basis of probity is public interest. So what kind of corruptions can be there? Corruptions can be of many types. One is bribery. We all know about it. Bribery is so common in our society. For a smaller thing, for a bigger thing, everything you need to pay a bribery. There can be embezzlement. And there can also be there's another term for embezzlement, which is misappropriation. Misappropriation. Patronage or nepotism. There is also kickback. These are few examples of corruption and how do they take place in the society. We see bribery. Even if you go to collectorate for a very small thing such as obtaining a birth certificate or a death certificate, sometimes you have to pay money to obtain that, or they are going to delay the process. Now you need that document very urgently. What will you do? They are going to take advantage of your urgency and ask for money, and you end up paying money. Or else you will catch hold of an agent and you have to pay extra money for that. For example, to get a death certificate or a birth certificate, the government charges are 50 rupees. But to obtain the same in less amount of time from an agent, you have to, end up giving 800 or 900 or sometimes 1000 rupees. So the extra money which you are paying is nothing but bribery that is going into the pockets of the officials. And hence, in a way, it is corrupting the whole society. It is becoming the habits of the official to eat such kind of money for their personal gains. And who is at the receiving end? The public. Think about a person who is living on pension. Think about a villager who is traveling all the way from village to the district collectorate to obtain a birth or a death certificate, which is needed for some kind of to get some kind of service or some kind of benefit from the government. Now that person needs the certificate in urgency, and if the agent asks him for 1000 rupees, the person does not have the capacity to pay that kind of money. So even in smaller events, smaller, decisions, corruption and bribery is involved. Forget about bigger decisions such as making a defense deal. So corruption has manifested in our country in every shape, way or form. We can also see corruption when the coal mines were allocated, or when the spectrum for telecommunication was allocated. So bribery is involved everywhere. And why is this bribery thing happening? Why is this corruption happening? Again, if you go to the basis of it, it is somewhere selfishness, self-interest of the officials involved, some kind of gain they are getting, either them or people attached to them, or some sort of gain to the political party, because the corruption money whichever comes is then deposited into the account of the political party, which ultimately helps it in funding the elections. So these things have become, unfortunately, the basis of the Indian administration, and the more and more they grow, the worse the Indian administration becomes. Embezzlement or misappropriation, that simply means it is a theft of public money. Theft of public money, that simply means whatever money you have or whatever resources you have, you are misallocating those or misappropriating those resources for personal gains. For example, there is a tribal land, and if that tribal land has been given to a capitalist to construct a mall or construct a factory, what ends up happening? you are going to get some sort of money out of it by misappropriating that natural resource which belongs to the tribal people. So the officials get paid for all these things. The voices of the tribals are mostly being suppressed, and the officials get huge amount of kickbacks from all these things, huge amount of money by misappropriating or by embezzlement. This is everywhere. Let's say 1,000 crore rupees has been given to you for old age pension, but the signatory authority, the one person who has the power to take decision, diverts that fund to, let's say, the sports authorities. And the sports authorities then in turn make biddings from favored companies to supply sports equipment. And in turn, what they are getting? They're getting huge amount of money from these capitalists, from these sports companies who are supplying, because they were sitting idle. Now they have a project. Now they have a contract to fulfill. So that 1,000 crores which had to go to the old age pension is now going to the sports authority, and in turn the sports authority has helped the companies to get contract. And in this manner, the company pays to the official for doing such a service to them. Because through contract, those companies are going to earn much of money, and some amount of money they pay to the official for favoring them. So that's also an example of misappropriation. It involves many things. It is not that only bribery is standalone. Bribery can be there with embezzlement. Bribery can be there with patronage or nepotism. To help your own relatives is nepotism. To help your people is patronage. We see this patronage thing after the government change. A new government comes in power. What ends up happening? All the people who were supportive, all the officers, the police officers, the administrative officers who were supportive of the government comes to power as secretaries, as commissioners, as superintendents, as different posts of the government. That's called patronage. If you send your daughter, you are an official, if you send your daughter to a company and ask the company to give her a job, in exchange you do some service to the company, get it a contract through wrong bidding, that's patronage. And what you are asking in return is bribery. You want a post for your own daughter in some company. So neutrality is not there. When this patronage and nepotism comes, neutrality is not there. There have been examples when the chancellors of the universities are not the meritorious persons, but those who were recommended by the political leaders. The posts of professors in the universities are held by the wives of IAS and IPS officers, unfortunately. Not by the meritorious people. This is one form of nepotism, where you favor one person for a particular job with the abuse of your power, get them that thing, and in a way hurt the public interest. So basically it drops down to the same thing, self-interest or selfishness. When you abuse your authority, you abuse your power for personal gain, corruption comes up. Patronage and nepotism is another form of corruption. Then kickbacks. You help a company, for example, Suresh Kalmani of the Congress government in the Commonwealth Games. What happened? He has given the contract for timings, in games, such kind of games like Commonwealth Games and Olympic Games. Timings are very important. If a race is finished in 9 seconds or 8 seconds, who is going to measure those times? So there are international companies who do such kind of things. So a contract was given to a Swiss company. The same thing can be done by a Spanish company in 1/10 of the price. but still it was given to the Swiss company. And in turn, the Swiss company have paid the politician. So what the politician is getting as benefit is the kickback. To favor a company for something and then getting your portion or your cut in return is called as kickback. So this is another kind of corruption. So we have bribery, embezzlement, misappropriation, patronage, nepotism, and kickbacks. And there are other forms of corruption also. Everywhere you go, you will see these kind of things, or you will see a combination of these things coming up, So this is what ends up happening. Public interest takes a back seat and private or personal interest takes the front seat. And it all happens because of the greed. It all happens because of the self-interest or the selfishness of the public officer. As Thomas Hobbes have said that man is brutish, there is also a thinking that it is not the nature, which Thomas Hobbes says that the nature of human being is brutish and selfish. But there is another thinking which says that it is not the nature but the way a person is nurtured, which results in corruption. So nurturing is very important. How your upbringing has been. How was your family life? Did you see the same examples of corruption in your own family? You are going to learn the same thing. How was the work culture where your father worked? How is the work culture where you work? Does your top management or the top leader is involved in any corrupt activities? If you see, the society in a way pets the person who is doing the corrupt practices. They have been made into successful examples without questioning them that from where are you getting these amount of money. If an officer is earning huge amount of money from corruption, he has been praised in the society, he has been accepted in the society rather than he has been given a punishment. So such kind of praise or such kind of support from the family and from the society also helps in breeding of corruption in the society and in governance. So how you have been nurtured by the family, by the society, by the work culture of the department in which you are working, this is important. If the work culture is very bad, then you don't respect women, you don't respect commitments, you don't respect contracts. You always look for gaps from where you can do any of these things, bribery, misappropriation or kickbacks. Then the work culture is not good. And if the work culture is not good, it will end up in corruption. So how would you stop this menace? How would you stop this? All the aspect of the governance is involved in corruption. Parliament or legislature, if they do such activities such as criminalization in politics or not following the code of conduct or code of ethics, the moral code of conduct during the election times have been breached several times. It happens everywhere. The politicians and the legislature, the member of parliament, the member of legislature do this all the time. This creates an example in the society. It is against accountability. If they are helping few people for kickbacks or for bribes, that ends up in lack of accountability and integrity in the administration. Also, they do it for personal gain, which hurts the public policy. And again the public interest has taken a back seat. Similarly, if judiciary is doing this, it hampers the rule of law. Again, it hurts the public policy and in turn affects the growth and development of the economy. if bureaucracy does this, if bureaucracy is involved in corruption, then ineffective or inefficient administration is the result. So every aspect of the governance, if you see, this can happen in army also. Think about it. If people are getting money just to, the people who are posted on the borders, they're getting money just to allow the drugs or allow the terrorists to enter our country or allow a messenger to enter our country. What ends up happening? What if a corrupt army officer starts selling the army goods to the outside society, be it be guns or be it be the food products? So there have been examples. Of course, there will be court-martialed, but many a times such examples have been there where such practice have been seen in the army also. So no aspect of the governance, no aspect of the society have been left behind from this ghost of corruption, which has taken its root quite deep in the Indian governance system. So how would you stop such practices? How would you ensure the accountability of the legislative system in the country and rule of law in the country and effective and efficient management and administration and governance in the country? So there can be two ways. One way is the internal way, that the person itself becomes good, ethical, honest. It happens when your nurturing is good. It happens when your nature is good. It happens when you pay attention to the ethical aspect of life, to the ethical behaviors. You pay attention to the importance of accountability, personal accountability and transparency in your personal life. Then that same thing gets replicated in the public offices also. There must be some sort of a spiritualism, because after the globalization and privatization and all these things, the Americanization is increasing. More and more corrupt practices are there. More and more, greed for material aspects of life is there. Now, the Western countries have a very developed model of checks and balances, but India, unfortunately, is not able to produce such an effective model of checks and balances. That is the reason, with increasing materialism, the corruption is also increasing in India. Okay. This is the internal mechanism through which we can combat corruption. What is the external mechanism through which we can combat corruption? The examples are Enforcement Directorate. Example is Central Bureau of Investigation. Example is Vigilance Commission and the committees which you have, which holds the officials accountable for whatever decision they are taking. From where does these corrupt practices are unearthed? If you see the Commonwealth Game Ghotala, or if you see the 2G spectrum or the Colgate, or if you see any other practices of horse trading happening within the parliament, how does this thing come into the media? Through these outside influences, through committees, through Vigilance Commission or Enforcement Directorate. When they get a lead, they start to work for it and something comes up, something is unearthed. Central Board of Direct Taxes, these are legislative ways, or from the government's perspective, important agencies which are investigating agencies in its different areas of crime, of vigilance, of Enforcement Directorate when it comes to money laundering and other things. Along with it, the Citizen Charter and the Right to Information Act has played a big role in ensuring accountability, transparency in the system, and in eradicating corruption. Also, the Lokpal and Lokayukt have played a big role in combating the corruption in the society, especially in the lower strata. For such small and petty things such as the death certificates and the birth certificates, you need not to wait and pay bribes because of the Citizen Charter Act. The right to information helps to unearth lot much of information. There is less and less of secrecy and more of transparency because of the information sharing and right to information. Agencies like Central Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement Directorate are quite powerful, but at the same time, these agencies have also been the puppets of the central government. Now, this is another criticism, but still, they are helping in unearthing the corrupt cases throughout the country and the corrupt officials and how they tie up their knots with different political people and also the capitalists. So this is how you combat corruption. One way is the self-nurturing way. One way is what you learned in your family, what you learn in society and work culture, and how you are nurtured, and whether you pay attention and importance to important practices such as accountability, transparency, honesty, ethical behavior or not. And the other is the external way of combating corruption, that you have some sort of fear in your mind that if I am not transparent and if I am not accountable, the ED may come on my door and ask for that extra proportion of money which I am holding. The Central Bureau of Direct Taxes may raid my premises just to know why I haven't paid the taxes and from where have I achieved this extra amount of money which is unaccounted. So, combating corruption is very much necessary. We need to create checks and balances in the society. We need to prioritize the empowerment of these agencies so as to combat corruption in the society. Along with it, the education factor is very important, how to inculcate ethical practices in the human beings from the very basic level. And the importance of the family, the mother, the father, and the associated relatives, the extended family plays a very important role. Also, what you are taking as an example. If you take Veerappan as an example, then there is some problem. If you take Harshad Mehta as an example, then there is some problem. If you take Abdul Kalam as problem, as an ideal, then, whom are you making as your ideal, as your end goal? Has to be some person who has ethical behavior. And when that happens in the society, you will see less and less corruption and more probity in governance. Thank you very much.